You fool! Warren is dead.
Part 8. The Meeting House. The meeting house stood at the end of a short, narrow lane off Market Street, a brick building with a slanted roof, the sort of structure most people walk past without seeing, modest, quiet, easily overlooked. At this late hour, under a leaden sky, it seemed to shrink even further, as though trying to disappear from view. The kid stopped at the mouth of the lane. "That's it," Alan said, somewhat disappointed. "Thought it'd be bigger." "That's the point," Brandon murmured. "Quakers aren't show-offs." Rose pulled her scarf up around her chin. "We should go home," she whispered. "I can't be late. My mum will kill me." Alice looked at her watch. "It's nearly 3:30. We've got about half an hour." Betsy stared at the building. Like Lowther in general, there was nothing remarkable about it. Not a single broken window. No evidence of vandalism. Nothing to suggest anyone had ever forced their way inside. In fact, it was tidier than most places in Lowther, with the exception of number 44, Buckingham Street. "What if we can't get in?" Rose said, hopeful. "Then we go home," Betsy replied. It was the obvious response. "If it's open, we'll take a look." "And then we go home," Alice insisted, sniffling. Betsy nodded distractedly. The group crept forward, careful to remain inconspicuous, a difficult task for a bunch of anxious kids. The meeting house sat behind a low iron gate that opened with a reluctant creak. A gravel path cut through a patch of dry, winter-browned grass. A wooden bench leaned under one of the windows, its paint flaking. Alan reached the door first, a heavy, old-fashioned thing with a square glass pane. He gave the handle a twist. It opened. "No way," he breathed. Rose whimpered. "Can we please just tell someone instead?" "And say what?" Alan snapped. "An old woman drew a map, so now we're investigating. They'll think we're stupid." Betsy wasn't sure what they'd think, but it wasn't their opinions that troubled her. It was what her dad might think. He was open-minded enough. He'd proved that more than once. The whole thing under the bed fiasco was a good example. But this wasn't just imagination running wild. Something was happening in Lowther. Something to do with the bag lady, the missing kids, and the man in the canal. Somehow, she didn't want to lay any of it on her dad. He'd been through enough. They both had. Inside, the meeting house was a single large chamber. Plain wooden pews arranged in a square facing inwards, as though in readiness for guests who'd never arrived. The place was chilly and still, the faint odour of dust and old, mysterious books hanging in the silence. "No lights," Alan muttered, flicking the nearest switch. Nothing happened. "Just the window," Brandon whispered, pointing to a small frosted panel high up on the far wall. It threw down a thin wedge of pale streetlight onto the floor. "Not enough to see by," Rose said. "Then stay close," Betsy replied. Alice unfolded the map, holding it up to the thin light. "There's a door on the left wall," she said, tapping the sketch. "Stairs behind it." "The cellar," Brandon added, pressing his lips together firmly. "Come on," Alan said. The left wall was ordinary enough. Smooth plaster, fading white paint, a couple of old notice boards pinned with yellowed flyers about charity events from years past. But at the far end was a door, half hidden behind a stack of unused chairs. "There," Alan whispered. Rose grumbled again. A voice inside her told her it was a bad idea to go fumbling about behind that door. Alice, as if sensing her friend's panic mounting, put an arm around her shoulder. "Remember what you said to me yesterday?" she said softly. "Just a quick look." Rose smiled emptily, put on a brave face. Betsy tried the handle. It turned. The door opened onto a descending flight of stairs, steep and thick with shadow. The top steps were visible in the weak spill from the main room, but the rest were swallowed by the unforgiving darkness. "Oh, no," Rose said, backing away. "I can't. I can't go down there." "You don't have to," Alice said. "Stay here or keep watch at the door." Rose snorted, casting furtive glances left and right. "Okay, I'll stay here." Betsy squeezed her hand before stepping past her. The rest of them, Alice, Alan, Brandon, and Betsy, peered down the stairs. "It's pretty dark," Alan whispered, the slightest tremble in his voice. Alice blinked. "Do you think we should give it a miss?" "No," he said affirmatively. "I want to know what's down there. We need to know. And I think," he went on, taking the first couple of steps, "there's light down there." And as they descended, the dim outline of a small rectangular shape emerged on the far wall. "Told you," Alan managed. A tiny window, grimy, half buried in the earth outside, filtered a faint slither of streetlight. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make out shapes, boxes stacked along the walls, old chairs, rolled carpets, and something else. In the corner, exactly where the bag lady's map had indicated, sat a large, cylindrical object, iron or steel, with a handle and a hatch, partially open. "It's a barrel," Alice whispered. "No," Brandon said. "It's a storage drum. My dad has one a lot like it. It keeps tools in it." Alan crept closer. Betsy remained where she was, her eyes unfocused, her mind racing. Heavy, open later. The words felt like ice in her chest. Alan crept closer still, reaching for the drum. "Don't," Alice hissed. "Alan, seriously, don't." His fingers found the handle. "Wait," Betsy put in. But it was too late. Alan had pulled the hatch wide open and was squinting to get a look at its contents. "It's empty," he announced. "Nothing in the bloody thing." And he was right. The storage drum, as Brandon had labelled it, contained nothing but shadows. The bag lady, who had marked the object as heavy, open later, had evidently returned to do exactly that. Betsy felt eyes on her in that moment, a sensation akin to having disturbed something that was never meant to be disturbed. And though the original trespasser was the strange old woman, she couldn't help but feel like she'd acquired some of that mysterious something, that it clung to her shoes and coat, filtered through her hair and sank into her skin, and that the majority of it, whatever it was, had found a home in the bag lady. "We need to leave," she said flatly. The others agreed non-verbally, and the four of them rushed back up the dark stairs. They met Rose at the top, grabbed her by the arm, and ran hell for leather through the pew-filled chamber, exiting the meeting house post-haste. "What does it mean?" Alice managed when she'd finally recovered enough to speak. The group had just reached Market Street, and were doing their best to look unassuming, in spite of the heavy breathing from all parties. The clock above the old town hall displayed 4:05 p.m., and as such they were the recipients of numerous critical glances from passers-by. The police presence, fortunately, was still largely in the vicinity of the laundrette, which was some distance off and wouldn't be passed on the way back to Buckingham Street. "Beats me," Alan said, his cheeks redder than ever. "What did you see down there?" Rose asked at last, directing the question at Betsy. "That's just it," Betsy replied. "There was nothing down there. Just a bunch of furniture and an empty barrel." She liked to think of the object as a simple barrel, less of a threat to her and her friends than a storage drum, a drum that had once contained... what exactly? "Then why the hell did we all have to run like that?" Rose demanded. Brandon sighed heavily. Alan mirrored him. Alice simply said, "Because Betsy felt something down there." "Felt something?" Rose mumbled. "Yeah," Betsy said, as the group approached the turn-off for Buckingham. But that was all she could say on the matter, as further along Market Street, somewhere between Pat Green's salon and Jimmy Davis, butcher, all hell broke loose.